Let me tell you a little about myself. My name is Clara Bennett, and I've spent the last 8 years of my life climbing the corporate ladder at Crestwood Dynamics, a company that prides itself on being innovative and cutting edge, though in reality it's just another soul-sucking machine where ambition often trumps humanity. Before you judge me for staying so long, let me say this. I wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, I believed in dreams, ideals, and making an impact. But somewhere along the way, I got lost in spreadsheets, deadlines, and trying to prove myself to people who never cared to see me as anything more than a cog in their profit-driven wheel. I'm not here to paint myself as some kind of hero or victim. Far from it. What happened to me was messy, complicated, and ugly. But if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that sometimes life forces you to confront truths you'd rather ignore. And trust me, when I walked into that meeting room on what seemed like any other ordinary Tuesday morning, I had no idea how much my world was about to change, or how far I'd have to go to reclaim even a shred of dignity. It started with coffee. Always does, doesn't it? That morning, I stood by the espresso machine in the break room, staring blankly at the swirling steam rising from my cup. The scent was comforting, familiar, but it couldn't mask the tension buzzing beneath my skin. Today was the big day, the unveiling of Project Horizon, the campaign I'd poured every ounce of energy into over the past 6 months. It wasn't just work, it was my baby, my chance to finally step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. Everyone said I needed this win, not just for my career, but for my sanity. As I walked toward the conference room, heels clicking against the polished marble floor, I could feel eyes following me. Some curious, others judgmental. Crestwood was notorious for its toxic culture of competition, where success was measured not by collaboration, but by who could stab whom in the back first. Still, I held my head high, clutching the folder containing my presentation like it was a lifeline. If I could pull this off, everything would be worth it. The late nights, the endless revisions, the sleepless weekends, all of it. The conference room was already filling up when I arrived. At the head of the table sat Marcus Langley, our CEO, a man whose charm was as sharp as his suits and twice as cold. He nodded curtly at me as I took my seat, his expression unreadable. Around the table were faces I knew well, colleagues who smiled politely but whispered behind closed doors, rivals eager to see me fail, and a few allies who genuinely wanted me to succeed. Among them was Rachel, my closest friend at the company, who gave me a reassuring smile from across the table. She mouthed, "You've got this," and for a brief moment I believed her. But then there was Daniel Harper, the creative director, and my direct superior. Tall, impeccably dressed, and perpetually smug, Daniel was the kind of man who thrived on intimidation. He made it clear from day one that he didn't think I belonged in his department, let alone leading such a high-profile project. His disdain for me was thinly veiled, disguised under layers of passive-aggressive comments and condescending smiles. As he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, I felt his gaze boring into me, daring me to mess up. "All right, team," Marcus began, cutting through the low hum of conversation. "Let's get started. Clara, you're up." My heart pounded as I stood, smoothing out my blazer. This was it. Taking a deep breath, I launched into my pitch, walking everyone through the strategy, the research, the execution plan. For the first 10 minutes, things went smoothly. Heads nodded, pens scribbled notes, and Marcus even cracked a small smile when I highlighted the projected ROI. But then came the questions. Daniel raised his hand lazily, interrupting mid-sentence. "Clara, can you explain why you chose this particular demographic?" His tone was casual, almost bored, but I recognized the trap immediately. We'd discussed this exact point during pre-meeting reviews, and he'd approved it without hesitation. Yet here he was, challenging me in front of everyone. "I thought we covered this last week," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. "The data shows." Yes, the data," he interjected, waving a dismissive hand. "But have you considered the potential backlash from alienating older consumers? Seems short-sighted, don't you think?" Before I could respond, Marcus chimed in. "That's a valid concern, Clara. Did you run simulations for alternative demographics?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Daniel cut me off again. "Honestly, Marcus, I'm surprised she didn't catch that earlier. Oversight like this could cost us dearly." The room grew uncomfortably silent. I glanced at Rachel, who looked equally stunned, then back at Daniel. His smirk told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't asking questions. He was dismantling me piece by piece. By the time I reached the final slide, my confidence was shattered. Each new critique from Daniel felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. When I finally finished, Marcus leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Thank you, Clara," he said coolly. "We'll need to revisit several aspects of this proposal before moving forward." In the meantime, he paused, glancing at Daniel. "Perhaps someone else should take the lead on refining these ideas." The words hit me like a freight train. Take the lead? After everything I'd done? I stared at him, dumbfounded, unable to process what was happening. "Marcus, wait," I started, but he held up a hand, silencing me. "That's enough," he said firmly. "This meeting is adjourned." And just like that, it was over. The room emptied quickly, leaving me standing alone, clutching my folder like a shield. Humiliation burned in my cheeks as reality sank in. They weren't just taking my project. They were stripping away my identity, my purpose. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled out of the conference room, desperate for fresh air. I didn't stop until I reached the stairwell, slamming the door shut behind me. Sliding down the wall, I buried my face in my hands and let the tears flow. How could this happen? All those sacrifices, all that effort for nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to the present. Without thinking, I dialed the only person I knew would understand. "Dad," I choked out when he answered. "Come here now." My father, William Bennett, has always been my rock. A retired firefighter with calloused hands and a heart of gold, he taught me resilience, integrity, and the importance of standing up for myself. Growing up, I idolized him, not because he was perfect, but because he never backed down from a fight, no matter how tough things got. Hearing his voice on the other end of the line calmed me instantly. "I'm coming, sweetheart," he said firmly. "Just stay put." While I waited, rage simmered beneath the surface. Every snide comment, every stolen credit, every promotion denied, it all came rushing back. Daniel Harper thought he could destroy me, but he underestimated one crucial thing. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. When Dad arrived half an hour later, I was pacing outside the building, still shaking with fury. Seeing him stride toward me in his worn leather jacket, determination etched into every line of his face, gave me strength I didn't know I had left. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice trembling but resolute. He placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "We fight back." Dad's words echoed in my ears as we sat together in the small park across from Crestwood Dynamics. The autumn leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the crisp air did little to cool the fire burning inside me. "Fight back," he had said, but how? This wasn't a playground squabble or a high school rivalry. It was corporate warfare, where power plays were subtle yet devastating. I glanced at him, searching for answers. "First things first," Dad began, his gravelly voice steady and reassuring. "You need to figure out what you're fighting for. Is it just about revenge? Or is it something bigger than that?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the question. All morning, all week, really, my thoughts had been consumed with anger. Anger at Daniel, at Marcus, at the entire system that allowed people like them to thrive while grinding others into dust. But now, sitting here under the fading sunlight, I realized there was more to it than that. It wasn't just about getting even. It was about reclaiming control over my life. About proving, to myself if no one else, that I wasn't going to let them break me. "I want justice," I finally said, my voice firm despite the lump in my throat. "Not just for me, but for everyone they've treated this way. People shouldn't have to live like this, constantly looking over their shoulders, afraid of being thrown away when they're no longer useful." Dad nodded approvingly. "Good. That's a start. Now, here's what we do next. Gather your facts. In any battle, knowledge is your strongest weapon. You know these people better than anyone else. Use that." The next few days felt surreal. On paper, nothing had changed. I still showed up to work on time, attended meetings, and completed assignments. But inside, I was building an arsenal. Every email, every document, every whispered conversation became potential evidence. I started paying closer attention to the dynamics within Crestwood Dynamics, noticing patterns I'd overlooked before. How Daniel always took credit for ideas that weren't his, how Marcus conveniently ignored unethical practices as long as profit soared. It was infuriating but also enlightening. For the first time, I saw the company for what it truly was, a house of cards, teetering precariously on lies and exploitation. Rachel noticed the shift in me almost immediately. One afternoon, as we grabbed coffee in the break room, she leaned in conspiratorially. "What's going on with you, Clara? You seem different." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Rachel and I had been friends for years, but loyalty could be a tricky thing in a place like Crestwood. Still, I trusted her enough to drop a hint. "Let's just say I'm done playing by their rules." Her eyes widened slightly, but instead of pressing further, she gave me a knowing smile. "Whatever you're planning, count me in." That simple statement meant everything. Having someone in my corner, even just one person, made the weight on my shoulders feel a little lighter. Meanwhile, Dad became my unofficial strategist. Every evening, after work, I'd meet him at his favorite diner downtown. Over greasy burgers and milkshakes, we plotted my next moves. He encouraged me to document everything meticulously, emphasizing the importance of having concrete proof. People like Marcus and Daniel rely on fear and intimidation because they think no one will dare stand up to them, he explained. But if you hit them where it hurts, their reputation, they won't know what hit them. With his guidance, I began compiling a dossier of sorts. Financial reports showing questionable expenditures, emails detailing discriminatory hiring practices, testimonies from former employees who'd left Crestwood disillusioned and bitter. Each piece of information added fuel to the fire growing inside me. But gathering evidence wasn't enough. I needed leverage and fast. My position at the company was precarious at best. Since the disastrous meeting, I'd been relegated to menial tasks, my contributions minimized to the point of invisibility. It was only a matter of time before they found an excuse to push me out entirely. I couldn't afford to wait. One name kept surfacing in my research. Evelyn Carter, a former senior executive who'd mysteriously resigned 6 months ago. According to rumors, she'd clashed repeatedly with Marcus over ethical concerns, though nothing had ever been proven publicly. If anyone knew the skeletons hiding in Crestwood's closet, it was her. Tracking Evelyn down wasn't easy. She'd vanished from the corporate scene entirely, leaving behind barely a trace. After hours of digging through LinkedIn profiles and old news articles, I finally stumbled upon a lead. She volunteered at a community center in the suburbs. Heart-pounding, I sent her a carefully worded email, explaining who I was and why I needed to speak with her. To my surprise, she responded within hours, agreeing to meet. The community center was a modest brick building tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paint and sawdust, and children's laughter echoed down the hallway. Evelyn greeted me warmly, her silver-streaked hair pulled back into a loose bun. Despite her casual attire, a faded t-shirt and jeans, she carried herself with the same commanding presence I remembered from photos. "Clara Bennett," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "I must admit, I was intrigued by your email. Not many people reach out to me these days." We settled into a pair of mismatched chairs near the window, and I launched into my story. I told her about Project Horizon, about Daniel's betrayal, about the toxic culture at Crestwood. As I spoke, her expression grew increasingly grim. "You're not the first to experience this," she said quietly when I finished. "Marcus and his cronies have been running roughshod over decent people for years. They don't care about innovation or progress. They care about power and money." She paused, studying me intently. "Why are you telling me this, Clara? What do you hope to achieve?" I took a deep breath. I want to expose them, hold them accountable for what they've done. Not just to me, but to everyone they've hurt along the way. Evelyn didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder stuffed with papers. "If you're serious about taking them down, you'll need this," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's everything I collected during my time at Crestwood. Documents, recordings, emails, you name it. Be careful, though. Some of it is explosive." My hands trembled as I flipped through the contents. There were internal memos detailing illegal kickbacks, whistleblower complaints swept under the rug. Even photos of lavish parties funded by company accounts. It was more than I'd hoped for, and far more dangerous. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, looking up at her. Giving me this puts you at risk too. Evelyn smiled faintly. I've got nothing left to lose. Besides, it's about time someone burned that place to the ground. Armed with Evelyn's files, I returned to Dad's diner that night, my mind racing with possibilities. We spread the documents across the table, piecing together a timeline of corruption and deceit. With each revelation, the plan crystallized further. But there was one crucial element missing: public support. Exposing Crestwood's crimes wouldn't be enough if no one believed us, or worse, if they didn't care. We need allies, Dad said, echoing my thoughts. People who can amplify your voice. Journalists, activists, maybe even some of your coworkers. He was right. Going after Crestwood alone would make me look like a disgruntled ex-employee with an axe to grind. But if I could rally others to join the fight, if I could show the world that this wasn't just about me, it might actually work. The next morning, I called Rachel. I need your help, I said without preamble. And I need you to trust me. She didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do. Over the following weeks, we built a network of insiders willing to share their stories. Former employees came forward with tales of harassment and discrimination. Current staff members provided damning details about unsafe working conditions and wage theft. Slowly but surely, the pieces fell into place. But as the momentum grew, so did the risks. One evening, as I left the office late, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Its tinted windows glinted ominously in the dim light. Paranoia crept in, whispering warnings I couldn't ignore. Were they watching me? Had they figured out what I was planning? I shook off the thought and quickened my pace, dialing Dad's number. When he answered, his voice was calm but urgent. Stay alert, Clara. These people don't play fair. I know, I replied, glancing over my shoulder. But neither do we. As I hung up, I realized something important. Fear wouldn't stop me anymore. Whatever happened next, I was ready. The night before the exposé was set to go public, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the final draft of the article Rachel and I had worked tirelessly to compile. It laid bare every dirty secret Crestwood Dynamics had tried so hard to bury. Illegal dealings, toxic practices, ruined lives. My hands trembled as I hit send, delivering it to a trusted journalist who promised to break the story wide open. By morning, the world knew the truth. Reporters swarmed outside Crestwood's headquarters, cameras flashing as Marcus Langley and Daniel Harper were called into emergency meetings with their lawyers. Employees gathered in hushed clusters, exchanging shocked whispers while social media erupted with outrage. That afternoon, Marcus summoned me to his office, not to berate me, but to plead. "We can fix this," he stammered, his usual confidence shattered. "Just tell them you made a mistake." I stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "No," I said firmly. "It's too late for that." Walking out of Crestwood Dynamics for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. Dad waited for me outside, pride shining in his eyes. Together, we watched as news vans rolled away, carrying pieces of a corrupt empire crumbling under its own weight. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough.